Hello, everybody. What is Power BI? Power BI, is the latest from Microsoft. It's an ever-growing suite. Definitely in the last few months, there's been all kinds of movement, and it seems to be continuing and momentum towards building this suite of tools, both desktop, online, in the cloud, that empower users to perform their own analytics. I sort of liken the Microsoft BI stack to a hibernating bear. For years, it was just kind of laying there, and people were using it, kind of proving that, yes, I can do large data warehouses and do a lot of business intelligence with the Microsoft stack, sort of proving themselves against all the other big guys. But then it sort of just was sleeping. And suddenly in the last year or two, this idea of Power BI has come up, and it's definitely awoken the hibernating bear. As you'll see, there's a whole set of tools out there that, are very powerful. And again, you still need maybe that underlying data warehouse, but with these Power BI tools, the power is in the user's hands. You still have, the same security, same level of performance, but the user is now able to do their own analytics and answer their own questions with much less interaction with your IT guys. All right, so the Power BI suite, again, as it stands today, as far as I know, there could be something new already about to be announced. But as of right now, here is your set of tools. So in Excel, 2010 plus, and actually a little bit with 2007 as well, but your 2010 plus, you've got your Power Tools, your Power Pivot, Power View, Power Query, Power Map. We'll talk about those a little bit in a minute. In the cloud, Power BI on Office 365, and there's a preview out there for something called Power BI Dashboards, which we'll take a look at. On the desktop, there's also a preview of the Power BI Designer, which basically allows you to do some of the same things you can do in Excel, but without needing Excel. On your tablet and phone, there's an iPhone, iPad, and a Windows app. We'll talk through these as we go. All right, so we'll start with Excel. Power Pivot, Power View, Power Query, Power Map. Really what these are means to connect to your data, right? Do analytics and display it in all different ways. So I'm going to click over here to my Excel Power View that I have created ahead of time. We have a small database of, I'll call it the Talon Law. So we've created a law office that you'll see has a very good average rate, over $400. But we have some billing data and some client and office data within our database. And actually the database that I have this connected to is a Azure SQL Premium database. Mine happens to be in East US. So I've connected my Excel spreadsheet to my SQL Premium database, and I pulled down a set of tables to pull into my Power View. I can do this within what's called the data model. We'll bring this up. So this is my mechanism for looking and pulling and kind of modifying and transforming all of my underlying data. So I've made my connection to the database. I've pulled down these various tables, and I've actually added here, as you'll see by the formula, a column. So this revenue column is not something that was readily available in my data, but I wanted to be able to use it. As a user, I was pretty easily able to say, oh, my revenue is my rate times my hours, put my formula in for that, and now create my column called revenue. There's all different various other transformations I can do. I can aggregate the data in different ways. I can add any number of calculated columns. I can also just add what I'll call a KPI. Here we have a unique matters KPI, which is just over the whole data set, not necessarily a column that's in any one table. And then I have an average rate KPI. So Power Pivot, very much like your typical standard pivot tables that you've seen in the past, but again, connected to my data source. Just like any other Power Pivot, pivot table, I can pull in the different columns, I can add slicers, I can do different formulas, sums, averages, that kind of thing. And then the Power View really is much like a Power Pivot or a pivot chart with a little bit better visual. So here I have a pie chart that is interactive. As I click on any one pie, all of the other charts that are connected will filter to just that one part of the pie. Each thing that rolls over gives you the details of revenue in this case for the office of main office. Again, I can filter from any one of the charts, or I can actually clear the filter and come back. So again, I'll call it prettier mechanism for displaying my charts. And some of these things you're going to see later come into play with the Power BI tools online. A Power Map, pretty much what you'd think, is a visual tool for displaying data that's geographically based. So in my Power Map, I am connecting to my same data model here, which is my Talon Law billing. And let's say I want to actually see my revenue, but by city. Based on the client city, I'm able to display my revenue. I can zoom in a little bit more. Again, just a geographical tool that allows me to sort of see how my different KPIs and measures are split up between different geographic regions. What I can do here now is take a video. So I can, start capturing my video and play at different levels, and I can actually show the different metrics that I want to show, and then sort of stop the video and store that and play it back later. So there's my Power Map. Power Query. Power Query really is sort of in addition to my standard way of capturing or pulling in my data. It allows me to connect to different types of data sources. I'll bring this guy up here. As you see, there's various different sources out there. You can use OData feeds. Obviously, you can use SQL Server on-prem. You can have SQL Server in the cloud. You can go to this Microsoft Azure Marketplace, which provides a bunch of free and pay subscription-based types of data that's out there. Hadoop, Hindsight, this list again is pretty big and growing every day. In addition, and actually these data sources, most of them are accessible via all these power tools. In addition to the different data sources, now within Power Query, it gives me a mechanism again to build that data model in a more user-friendly way. I can actually create queries ahead of time and post them out there. So I'll actually show you here. This is my data catalog queries. Post them out there in the excuse me, in the ether for others, or in my organization for others to use. So if it's a very complicated query that an IT person is required to build, or does a lot of different stuff that you'd want to do behind the scenes in the database, you can build that query ahead of time, post it out there, and others can use it without needing to understand the underlying technical details about how the query was put together. All right, so these are my Excel tools. And again, in and of themselves, yeah, here I can share this around. I can send my Excel file around to other people in the organization. But really, it's the additional Power BI tools that are going to empower you to use these in an even more collaborative way. So Power BI in the cloud. This is really made up of two things: your Power BI for Office 365, and the Power BI dashboard, which, as I mentioned earlier, is currently in a preview, and this little picture of it here on the side. What I'm going to do is go log into my Power BI. Okay, so as part of my Office 365 subscription, I have, I'll show you here, what will pop up if you have the Power BI is a little button. Okay, I can get to my Power BI from here. What this really is underlying is SharePoint Online, but with a twist. What it allows you to do is post your different Power Views and Excel spreadsheets that have Power View, Power Pivots, maps, all those things in them. Post them for not only, depending on the way it's set up, your organization or the public to see. So I've already posted and favorited this Talon Law Azure SQL Premium dashboard, which we'll click into in a bit. We have some World Bank indicators sample data. and some Olympic sample data. So as I log in, my favorites, sort of this is my login page or my landing page, my favorites will show up. All right, and also I have an underlying, as I mentioned, SharePoint Online underlying, I have an underlying view into the actual document library. So here in the document library, there's a bunch of other folders, a bunch of other Excel files, but I've again featured or favorited 2 of them. If I click in, I'm now seeing a Excel Online version of my Power View. Well, shortly, here we go. Where I also have, where I can also do all the same things with the filters that I mentioned earlier. And they all are tied together. I can actually filter separately here by just one office if I want. Okay. And so now I've actually posted this Excel file onto SharePoint and allowed others access to it within my organization. So this is really what your Power BI, the initial offering of Power BI is a way, a place to post your Excel files and to actually share them with your organization. A couple other things I can do here. Come into my folder. I can actually schedule a data refresh. So I don't necessarily have to download this spreadsheet or open it and hit refresh to refresh the underlying data. Depending on how my connection is set up, if it's got the right security permissions and isn't trying to access a database that isn't generally available to your organization, and this one happens to have that little green check light, I'm able to set the connection. Because of my particular subscription, I have only daily, weekly, but some of the other Power BI, I think the Power BI second tier allows you can do hourly updates as well. But I can do weekly, daily, any one days I want, starting and ending on a certain day, certain times, and send notifications. So if I save this, what will happen is I will get a notification every day or week that the file was refreshed, and that is available to anybody who now goes and brings up the spreadsheet. So rather than having, your standard SSRS reports, let's say, which have a schedule on them or subscription on them, you can post things here, and basically accomplish the same thing where it refreshes itself every day or every week, and all your users can go and take a look. One other thing to mention as I'll click back in here. I believe the only option there used to be for displaying these was Silverlight, and this is Silverlight, but as you know, that's really only available in IE. Now there is an option for HTML5, so this can basically any browser that supports HTML5, which most of them do these days, can display these Power Views. If I have a data source that's on-prem that I want to connect to one of these spreadsheets to, there's something called a data management gateway, which I can have installed internally within my organization and set up basically a gateway so that each of these data sources can refresh themselves using the right security, without them having to be only on-prem. So it just kind of allows a secure mechanism to get back into your on-prem databases for these refreshes. Okay. Another very cool feature is called Q&A. So basically what I have here is a natural search of Google, if you will, of all of the files, the data that I posted here onto Power BI. So I'm going to ask a question. So I want revenue by work quarter. As I'm typing, you can see the various charts popping up in practice. So just by asking a question or just by natural language typing, I already have a chart here popping up that gives me the answer that I want. I can also sort of, based on the question that you ask or the word you're typing, it sort of guesses at the type of chart, and it does a pretty good job at it. But I can also change my chart. So if I wanted to do a pie chart instead or or I wanted my 100% chart. I wanted my chart to turn, to be more of a column versus a bar. What I can then do, got some options here. I can actually say this wasn't a very helpful question, or the result not being very helpful. I can actually show featured questions that others have featured. I can feature this question that I just put in. I can share a link so that others can just basically run the exact same question or execute the same question and get the same answer. And I can, copy the URL. So a very cool feature that without having to create charts ahead of time or, provide this information to a user, they can ask the questions and get answers right away in a very visual format. All right, I am going to go over here one last thing. So I can also take one of these Power Views and I can embed it into any web page I want. So I'm going to go over to our blog where I've posted a blog and some of the details of how to do that. But what I will show you is that in our Talon blog, it's going to go up here in a second. I'll bring up the larger view anyway. In our Talon blog, I have, utilizing an iframe and what's called a guest link that I've set up ahead of time here, I've provided a means to embed this actual Power View right into my web page. So this can be done in any blog, any web page, anywhere that you want to embed your data. Again, same features, functions, just like any of the other Power Views. And the way I've done that, again, is using my Power BI setup here, posting things to my Power BI SharePoint online, and then providing a guest link. So you obviously would want to make sure that you're not posting any data you wouldn't want the world to see, but if that's data that, if that's available or it's not a problem to do that, then the means to do is very easy. They now have introduced something called Power BI dashboards, and actually anytime you log into your Power BI account, you'll see up here in the top right, try it. I've already tried it, so when I go there, it's going to bring me in. Okay, so with Power BI, I always have to use Excel, but what the dashboard is there for is to take the Excel part out if I want to. So I can actually get data from a number of different data sources. One of them is Excel, so I can upload or connect to an Excel workbook just like I did in the Power BI world. I can do a Power BI designer file, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. It's, again, a desktop tool that allows you to design your pivot charts, your Power Views, basically, outside of Excel, but in the same fashion. I can connect to an analysis services cube, as long as that analysis service cube is tabular to start off with. I think at some point they'll support for other, for the different types of cubes, but for now it's tabular. GitHub, if I have this data, Marketo, I can connect to Microsoft Dynamics. These things, this list keeps growing as well every day. I can't currently connect to just any old SQL Server and write a query, but anything I do in Excel through my Power Views, can provide that same mechanism. Again, I can, much like the data management gateway, I can actually connect or provide a connection into my on-prem queues, SQL Server Analysis Services cubes, through really there's a connector that uses the data management gateway to do just that. Okay, so I've actually already created a dashboard. So what I have here is the Talon Law dashboard, in which I have these little widgets with various pieces of information that came from my sources. So one of my sources, I'll bring it up here, very similar to what you've been seeing throughout, is my Talon Law Excel spreadsheet with various charts in it. So as you look at any one of your reports, you'll end up seeing this. You'll see this pinned to my dashboard. And if I go back to my dashboard, it pinned again. I have it twice here because I already had it, but it pinned the actual particular widget. So what this allows me to do is I can create one dashboard. I can go to various reports and take the most important information, or at least what I would see as the most important information, and pin it to the dashboard. There we go. Also within here, you can actually set up various pages within my report, so much like the sheets in Excel, so that I can actually have a separation of the different types of widgets. I'm just going to create one real quick here. My revenue. Right. There's a few different types of charts that are not available in Excel, one of which is what's called a combo chart stacked, so that I can combine a bar chart along with a line chart. There's something called a card, which I think you saw with those big numbers that kept popping up, so I'll bring revenue here. I'll set it to be a card. It doesn't look all that fancy inside here, but if I now pin this to my dashboard, these big numbers here that just show you that one larger or overall global metric are based on these cards. So again, there's some various newer types of charts and options available within the dashboard that aren't necessarily available in Excel. Bring up the Power BI Designer. I talked about this a little earlier. Much like the features inside Excel, I'm able to, using this desktop tool, without the need for Excel 2010 or 2013, run this desktop tool, connect to all of my various data sources, create all the same types of charts. So again, just the mechanism for creating my Power Views without needing Excel. All right, you have some various apps. So I've got an iPhone and an iPad app. I don't have an iPhone or iPad, so I just took a couple screenshots. So here's an iPhone version, which really, when you connect in, it gives you that same view as the new dashboard. So I can see any dashboard that I have created out there. I can see all of the various charts that are within. I can create favorites. In the iPhone app, there's something called alerts, which allows you to set an alert when any one metric or measure goes above or below a certain value. The iPad app, very similar, and although for some reason the iPad app doesn't have the alerts, but same idea. And there's also a Windows app, which is called Power BI, which allows you to connect into your Power BI website. You know, as you see, there's a ton of different tools out there for utilizing Power BI and really putting the power into the end user's hands.